Troika is one of my favorite role-playing games of all time, so in this video, I'm going to show you what it is, how to create a character, how to play the game, and which supplemental rules I recommend for beginners. There are timestamps below if you want to skip around. Let's get started. Troika uses the same basic rules as Fighting Fantasy, a series of game books from the 80s. Think choose your own adventure plus dice rolling. But, unlike the single-player game books that inspired it, Troika is a traditional RPG where one or more players control their own character, and a GM sets the scene, narrates, and acts as referee. It describes itself as science fantasy. I would describe it as cosmic psychedelia. The specific kind of sci-fi and fantasy it's going for reminds me of the cover art of old paperbacks, weird British comics from the golden age of 2000 AD, and the surreal video games you'll find digging around the RPG Maker scene. Which is to say, it's rad as hell. Adventures in Troika take place somewhere in the humpbacked sky, a vast expanse studded with countless crystal spheres. Each sphere is a world unto itself with its own unique cultures, creatures, and magic. The golden barges, ancient and ill-understood void-going vessels, facilitate travel between the spheres. And at the center of everything is the cosmic melting pot, the city to end all cities, Troika itself. And that's kind of it. Iron out the specifics yourself, or don't. Troika's the kind of game where vibes always beat lore, and as long as the vibes are right, everything else will be too. No matter how weird your ideas, you will be able to find a place for them in this game. The adventure and wonder is in the gaps. Your game will be defined by the ways in which you fill them. That's an ethos I can really get behind. And did I mention it's free? If you sign up for the publisher's newsletter, they'll send you a full PDF of the game. No strings attached. Characters in Troika are absolute weirdos. Let's make one together. You'll need a character sheet, something to write with, and 2 6-sided dice. The first step is to roll for stats. You have 3 of them: skill, stamina, and luck. Skill is your natural talent, how good you are at doing just about everything. Roll a d3 and add 3. Stamina is how tough you are. When you get hurt, your stamina goes down. If it goes to 0, you might die. Roll 2d6 and add 12. Luck is your ability to counter the fickle whims of fate. You can spend luck points to avoid mishap. Roll 1d6 and add 6. Next, write down your baseline possessions. These are the starting items that everyone gets. That's 2d6 silver pence, a knife, a lantern, a flask of oil, a rucksack, and 6 provisions. The money and provisions have their own special places on the sheet, and I'd probably write the rucksack down in the space for things you're wearing, since it's presumably the thing you're using to carry your other items. Go ahead and write down the damage your knife does, too. I'll go over how that works when we talk about combat. Finally, we're going to roll a d66 to determine our background. d66 is just a weird way of saying roll 2d6 and read the result as a 2-digit number instead of adding them together. Let's say we rolled a 6 and a 3, a 63. That means we're playing a venturesome academic. Your background is your character's starting point. It represents who they were or what they did prior to the start of the game. Backgrounds give you some additional starting items, a selection of advanced skills. Advanced skills are like your areas of expertise. Some backgrounds will also give you spells or special rules that only apply to you. Let's take a look at our nerd. You're a classically trained academic, a product of the universities of the Brass City, the Palace of Tigers, or some other less prestigious center of learning among the spheres. Cool. We get some reading glasses, a sword, some candles and matches, writing materials, and a journal. These go in our inventory. And for advanced skills, we have Evaluate in Astrology at rank 2, and Healing, Sword Fighting, and Sleight of Hand at rank 1. We also have 1 random spell at rank 1. Neat. We will add our rank in each advanced skill to our skill stat to get our skill totals. Write those down. As a venturesome academic, we also have a special rule that lets us test our luck to recall trivia about the humanities and natural sciences. After naming our character, we are done. You have your character sheet, now how do you use it? In this section, I'll go over the most common dice rolls and procedures you'll encounter in a game of Troika. I've broken it up into a few categories: skill rolls, luck rolls, items and equipment, combat, spellcasting, rest and recovery, and advancement. Let's start with skill rolls. These are the most common way you'll interact with the rules of the game. Whenever you're trying to do something with a chance of failure, roll 2d6. If the result is equal to or lower than your skill, you succeed. But if the thing you're trying to do is related to one of your advanced skills, your target number is its skill total, not just your skill stat. Quasel is trying to tell whether or not the crystalline effigy their friend bought is a counterfeit. Because they have a skill of 7 and the advanced skill Evaluate at rank 2, their skill total is 9. They must roll a 9 or lower on 2d6 to know whether or not the artifact is fake. When you're trying to do something and someone else is trying to stop you or beat you to it, you'll make a roll versus. Both you and your opponent will roll 2d6 and add your skill, or if you have it, the skill total of an advanced skill related to the task. The highest roll wins. Twazel is trying to sneak a scroll out of a wizard's collection, and a guard's patting them down to make sure they don't. They have a skill of 7 and 1 rank in the advanced skill Sleight of Hand, so they'll roll 2d6 and add 8. The guard has a skill of 5 and no relevant advanced skills, so they'll roll 2d6 and add 5. If Twazel's roll is higher, they get away with the loot. If the guard's roll is higher, Twazel gets caught. Hitting someone in combat is also a roll versus, but we'll get there in a minute. You won't always be able to rely on your skills. Sometimes the only thing standing between you and your doom is pure chance. Whenever something bad happens, and it will, your GM might ask you to test your luck. Roll 2d6. If the result is equal to or lower than your luck stat, you succeed, avoiding whatever fate was about to befall you. But every time you test your luck, regardless of success or failure, your total luck is reduced by 1. You always have the option to refuse a luck roll if you don't want your stat to go down, but keep in mind that means accepting the consequences as well. Twazel is crossing a rickety bridge high up in the mountains, and the GM asks them to test their luck. Their luck is 6. They agree to the test and roll 2d6, getting a 12. Not good. The GM then describes the wind catching their pack, causing one of their possessions to tumble into the ravine below. Even worse, Twazel's luck goes down to 5 because they agreed to the test. An adventure's success can often come down to what an adventurer is hauling around in their backpack. Not counting your money, provisions, or the things you're wearing, you can carry 12 items. Your character sheet has 12 slots for you to fill. Some items, like arrows or plasmic cores, are small and can be bundled together. They only take up 1 slot, even if you have many of them. And some items, like weapons that take 2 hands to wield, are large. They take up 2 slots. Write them at an angle like this. Armor takes up a number of slots equal to twice its protective value. We'll get there in the combat section. If you're ever carrying more than 12 items, you're overburdened. Treat your skill as being 4 lower than it actually is until you're able to ditch the extra weight. The rules for combat are pretty detailed compared to the rest of the game. This isn't because combat is more important, but because combat is more chaotic, with a higher chance of negative consequences. If you're risking death, you want to make sure everything is fair and by the book. As you take hits, your stamina will decrease. If it goes below 0, you're dead. Optionally, GMs might allow characters who die to test their luck. If they fail, they're dead for real. But if they succeed, they might just be incapacitated or injured. When a fight breaks out, it's time to assemble the initiative stack. This is how we tell the turn order of everyone in combat. Tokens representing the various combatants are put into a central pool and drawn one at a time. These tokens can be anything. Names in a hat, dice in a bag. I like to use playing cards. Each player puts in 2 tokens to represent their character, and the GM puts in additional tokens to represent the enemies, plus 1 token to represent the end of the round. Let's say 4 player characters are fighting a manticore. Player 1 puts their tokens, the King and Queen of Hearts, into the stack. Player 2 puts in the King and Queen of Clubs, Player 3 the King and Queen of Diamonds, and Player 4 the King and Queen of Spades. The manticore is a fearsome foe, so the GM puts the 1 through 5 of diamonds into the stack as its tokens. The GM then puts the Ace of Spades into the stack to mark the end of the round. The tokens are mixed up and drawn one at a time. When a character's token is drawn, they take a turn. When the end of round token is drawn, all tokens are mixed up again and a new round starts. This continues until all the combatants on one side are slain, knocked out, flee, surrender, or are otherwise removed from the fight. When your token is drawn, it's your turn and you can take one action. An action can be just about anything that makes sense in the moment, but I'm going to go over your most common options. Hitting someone, shooting someone, casting a spell, delaying your turn, moving somewhere, using an item, retrieving an item, or grappling someone. Hitting someone with a weapon is just a normal roll versus, using the skill totals of the weapons you and your opponent are wielding. Whoever rolls highest deals damage to whoever rolls lowest. Shooting someone with a missile weapon is also a roll versus, except the target doesn't get a chance to hit you back if they win. To determine how much damage you do, roll a d6 and check its result on your weapon's damage table. Each weapon is unique. Casting a spell in combat works exactly like it does out of combat. I'll explain that in its own section. If you don't want to take your action yet, you can delay your turn. This is really useful in situations where, for example, you want to attack someone with a lightning staff, but you'd really rather do it after your friend who's wielding a bucket of water takes their turn. To delay your action, just put your token back in the initiative stack. All combat actions are assumed to incorporate a little bit of movement. Hitting someone with your sword involves moving up to them before you swing, but if you want to move further than that, it'll take your whole action to do it. If you're holding an item and want to use it to help you out in combat, go for it. That will also take a whole action. If you're not already holding the item you want to use, retrieving it from your pack mid-combat might be a little bit tricky. Find the item you want to use on your character sheet and look at the number written next to the slot it's in. If you can roll that number or higher on 2d6, then you can retrieve the item and use it this turn. But if you can't, then it takes your entire action just to retrieve the item, and you won't be able to use it until next turn. This means the order in which you write things down in your inventory matters. If you're a character who fights with a projectile weapon, you might want to make sure that your ammunition is stored in one of those first item slots. You might want to grapple your opponent instead of attacking normally. To do so, roll versus. On a success, you can either throw your opponent to the ground or tackle them to the ground, dealing damage equal to an unarmed strike. But if you tackle, you're on the ground too. Rolling double sixes means that your opponent is knocked unconscious for 1d6 rounds. If you fail to grapple your opponent, though, that means they get to deal damage to you as if they had attacked normally. This isn't an exhaustive list of actions. If you want to try something else on your turn, go for it. Leaping from a catwalk to the water below, powering on a machine in the center of the battlefield, barricading a door so reinforcements can't show up. It's all good, and they're all actions. Now, let's talk about some situational stuff. If you roll double sixes on your attack, that means you've struck a mighty blow. Double your damage. If you're wielding two weapons, roll damage for each of them and take whichever result is higher. When you attack someone that isn't aware of your presence, roll under instead of rolling versus, that way they don't get a chance to hit you back. Also, you add +2 to your damage roll. Wearing armor reduces the damage you take from all attacks by a static number. Light armor reduces damage by 1, medium by 2, and heavy by 3. Using a shield also reduces the damage you take by an additional 1 point. Armor and shields can't reduce the damage you take to 0. If you get hit, you'll always take a minimum of 1 point. When attacking someone who's behind cover, they get a bonus to their roll of between +1 and +6, depending on how good the cover is. Whenever you hit your opponent, you have the option to test your luck. If you succeed, then you get +2 to your damage roll. You can also test your luck to break ties in your favor. And that's about it. If this section seemed like a lot, remember you can always lean on the other people you're playing with. If you don't remember a rule, somebody at the table is bound to. And if they don't, that's fine. It's all easy to look up in the rule book. Now, on to magic. Harnessing the arcane powers of chaos is just like any other skill roll, except with a few more wrinkles, and much harsher consequences if you fail. To cast a spell, you'll need to be able to speak and have at least one hand free, spend stamina equal to the casting cost of the spell, and succeed in a skill roll using the skill total of the spell. If you fumble on your casting roll, meaning double sixes if it's roll under, or double ones if it's roll versus, you'll have to roll on the oops table, which could result in accidentally summoning a demon, accidentally turning yourself into a pig, causing all your teeth to fall out, all kinds of cool stuff. The life of an adventurer can be exhausting, and if you don't stop and rest every now and then, you might find yourself in a life-and-death situation without the strength to overcome it. Resting takes 8 hours, and at the end of it, you'll regain 2d6 stamina and 2d6 luck that you've lost in your adventures. If you don't have 8 hours to spare, you can eat one of your provisions to regain 1d6 lost stamina, but you can only do this a maximum of 3 times per day. Resting also gives you the opportunity to reflect on your adventures, and possibly learn from them, but that gets its own section. Troika doesn't use levels or experience points. Instead, characters get better at things by doing them. Whenever you successfully use one of your advanced skills, put a check mark next to it. Then, the next time you rest, you can make a roll to see if it gets better. Roll 2d6, and if the result is equal to or higher than your advanced skill's total, its rank goes up by 1. You can make up to 3 advancement rolls per rest. After you've made your rolls, remove all check marks on your sheet. Twazel has a skill of 6, and a check mark next to their rank 1 advanced skill Sleight of Hand from that time they pickpocketed a rhino man. They roll 2d6, and if the result is 7 or higher, their Sleight of Hand becomes rank 2. You can also spend time deliberately training your advanced skills, but you'll need to find a teacher who's up to the task. Training takes 1 week, plus an additional week for each rank you already have in the advanced skill you're trying to improve. At the end of your training, make an improvement roll. If you succeed, its rank increases by 1. If you fail, your training hasn't paid off yet. Try again later. Through training, you can also learn new advanced skills. It takes 1 week and a successful 2d6 roll under your skill to gain the first rank in a new advanced skill. Twazel is spending the winter trapped in a ruined ski resort with an old mechanic who's agreed to teach them. Twazel has a skill of 7. After a week of training, Twazel rolls a 3 on 2d6. They now have the advanced skill mechanics at rank 1. Twazel continues their training. After 2 more weeks, they're ready to make an advancement roll. Since they already have rank 1 in mechanics, they're trying to roll an 8, their mechanics skill total, or higher on 2d6. If they do, mechanics will increase to rank 2. Unfortunately, they rolled a 4. This means that the last 2 weeks didn't lead to any breakthroughs. Their mechanics remains at 1. Luckily for Twazel, there are many more weeks in winter, and many more chances to learn from the old mechanic. We've talked about what Troika is, how to create a character, and how to play. Now we're in the home stretch, and I've saved the best for last. It's hard to grasp just how well supported this game is. Between the official releases, the third-party publications, and all the fan content, there is more material available for Troika than even the most dedicated game group could play through in decades. This is in part thanks to a very lenient licensing policy, which allows you to make whatever Troika-compatible thing you want and distribute it however you want, as long as it includes this text somewhere in it. On one hand, that's exciting. This game encourages a vibrant and active community that's continuously making cool new stuff. But on the other hand, it's a little intimidating. Where are you supposed to start? To make that decision a little bit easier, I'm going to talk about some Troika books that I personally recommend for beginners. My goal here isn't to provide a comprehensive list, but to pique your interest with a small sample of what's out there. Let's look at some books. You have this one already, or at least the PDF. It's got the rules and a starting adventure, a dungeon crawl, kind of, in a weird hotel. This is everything you need to play, but you're gonna want more. This one's the archetypal Troika adventure. The Duke is a benevolent ruler. He's also a freaky plant monster that needs magic dirt to live. You're sent to figure out why the dirt shipment stopped. Expect to see space travel, feral Baba Yagas, and nightly orders of ghostly gardeners. A brutal, arid sphere to adventure in. The world is presented entirely through new backgrounds and enemies. No walls of text here, just pure gameable content. A package is lost in the Goblin post office, and it's your job to find it. It's got a boss robot, a spider lady, and male bandits. This one is probably my favorite Troika adventure. A sphere inhabited by peaceful, intelligent, prehistoric animals is threatened by vicious, plundering humans. It's got new skills, spells, items, and backgrounds, and 2 adventures. A collection of truly alien beings, spirits born from the shame of bad haircuts, living buildings that eat the sad stories of people who shelter inside them, a creature that harvests emotions and turns them into edible pellets. There's a guide and mini-adventure in the back that gives you an idea how these weirdos interact. I'm going to stop here before this video becomes 3 or 4 times longer than it is. There's a lot of truly excellent Troika material out there. I've shown you the path, but the journey is yours. Go out and find the Troika book that speaks to you. And with that, I'd like to say thanks for watching. I hope this video was useful to you. There are links to everything I mentioned in the video description below. See you next time.